Well, hello there. How you doing? I was going to do a show yesterday, but I couldn't get my console to work right. And I also have Sam and Winnap, but I had problems. I do two other shows, and I do them on Sam and Winnap, which you don't really care about. But anyway, this show is one I did on Blog Talk Radio quite a while back. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to play it. Then I may do some talking after that. And I got a couple of recordings to play by Ryan Harvey, who is a veteran of the Iraq War. And his music is, of course, anti-war, as most of the veterans are anti-war. So, here we go.
You want the truth? You can't handle the truth.
In the hood, I was called the crazy old white man. Then I moved to downtown Detroit, and I became Then I went on internet radio, and I was just called the crazy old man. So please, listen to the Crazy Old Man Network. Thank you.
You want the truth? You can't handle the truth. Capitalism comes with profit, being the primary motivation for everything in competition. Human needs are not included. The U.S. is a business if you want to understand it. Started by Freemasons who thought it out and planned it. Christians killed the Indians, the rich was expanded. They needed a labor force and said slaves will handle it. I read kept the evidence in books document. They needed a logo to trade under like any other business type. So was commissioned to create the stars and stripes, judged by GDPs and Wall Street salaries, but not far from last if you ask about morality. If you think of it, we're not even considered citizens. The fact is we're customers, stuck up under businesses. The business model's name is given as capitalism. system. From the same people that bought you slavery and prisons. For hundreds of years, it's the system that we fought. As seen on TV where the airwaves are bought. But if you act now, you won't be on the net caught. 1% stay rich, that's what we have in the system. They say nothing's free cause we in capitalism. 1% stay rich, that's what we have in the system. They say nothing's free cause we in capitalism. They base democracy in being free on elections. But getting elected is not free, it's expensive. Campaign advertising, the cost can be rising in the billions. The system's craziness is major, so the president is known for a particular behavior. He honed his skills as a business fundraiser. When you're always in beef and hustle for money all the time, in the street we call that running organized crime. They tell us they know the drugs and teach us about there, but when you go to the doctor, all it is drugs there. They lock up drug dealers on the street, that's small time. The biggest drug dealers advertising prime time. Killing and torturing, it leads to bad pub. SOA and Blackwater, take it back to the club. After a shooting they change names, but it's still the same. The act don't change, the same practices remain. 1% stay rich, that's what we have in the system. They say nothing's free cause we in capitalism. 1% stay rich, we have in the system. Say nothing's free, capitalism. We live in this, you might think it's not that insidious, but slavery still exists and we're clothed in this business. Clothes made in sweatshops and we eat China's fishes. Look at the packages on fish, you can witness it. Look at your clothes on the tags, it's ubiquitous. Made in the third world where kids sew your game balls. The U.S. prefers workers with no labor laws. The cause and effect is direct in plain sight. If a leader from these countries starts to fight for workers' rights, the CIA overthrows them or hurts them with their might. Not an act, it's all facts that can be verified. A mummy from the Congo in 65 homicide. They see morals and human rights is in the way of their pay, and a 9-year-old could see through the lies. When one can take 8 slices from a pie of 9, and the rest of us can fight over one to survive. 1% stay rich, that's what we have in the system. They say nothing's free cause we in capitalism. Judged by GDPs and Wall Street salaries, but not far from last if you ask about morality. The rich stay rich paying out poverty wages, and socialism's what the rich say is outrageous. When information is owned by the rich, it's contagious. King had another dream, he said that could save us. He said there's something else, we gotta see the mileage. We become civilized when poverty's abolished. They say it's not bad, that it's just some bad seed. At the root, capitalism is legalized greed. They stay in business selling you the philosophy that you could be the next one in a million ideologies. But you don't stay rich by spreading too much wealth around. It's only room for a few to keep the system's held sound. It's a dream, what you've been hearing, it is what it seems. Like Primerica, America is a pyramid scheme. Dr. King wasn't killed for wanting voting equality. He was killed when he went and spoke out about poverty. 1% stay rich, that's what we have in the system. They say nothing's free, capitalism. Judged by GDPs and Wall Street salaries, but not far from last if you ask about morality.
Checking out of this twisted mythology, the holidays glorifying genocide and robbery. Until the end, I'm a world citizen. Until the end, I'm a world citizen.
Big shout out to Ryan Hart, making this beat.
Capitalism may cause war, starvation, extreme inequality, environmental destruction, and other problems listed on this CD. Ask a person who lost their house trying to pay their medical bills if capitalism is right for you.
Okay, that was The Truth, THATRUTH, at thetruthmusic.com. And I use quite a bit of their music on my radio shows because they're young people that know what they're talking about. Today we're talking about the sins of our country. Don't have time to go through all the sins because our country has a whole lot of sins. All you gotta do is look at what we're doing in Palestine. Look at what we're doing in Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and then look what we're complaining about in Syria, Iran. We don't complain about Yemen, yet Yemen is just as bad as Syria and Iran. Well, Syria, I think, is probably the worst. Bahrain would be a close second, maybe even the worst. And you got Saudi Arabia meddling in the Bahrain's affairs. And the United States isn't doing a damn thing about Yemen, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, or Palestine. Because we're buddies with those countries. Well, with Israel in the case of Palestine. president's saying that the only way they're going to have peace between Israel and Palestine is for peace talks. Peace talks haven't been going anywhere in years. The reason they haven't been going anywhere is because Israel does not want Palestine to be free. Why? I think it's just that they like it beating down the Palestinians. They say that their security won't be any good with Palestine as a separate country. That's bullshit. Israel is the fourth most powerful nation on earth. Now, they have proven that they can whip the other Middle Eastern countries because they did it. That was a long time ago, but they're more powerful now than they were then. When you look around the world and see what the United States has done, and then they complain because countries in the UN complain about human rights violations and war violations. Let's look at Iraq. Between the first and second Iraq wars, 2 million people died of starvation, medical problems, and that was 12 years. And the 24 years that Saddam Hussein was in, he killed 300,000 people. Yes, he was a bad guy. But who's worse? When the first war in Iraq, we destroyed their weapons that we said they still had. We destroyed companies or factories that made the baby's milk. And then we used weapons that had depleted uranium in them. Iraq War II, hundreds of thousands of civilians were killed, mostly children in both cases. Depleted uranium. And both wars caused birth defects in children. Not only children of the Iraqis, but also the children of the soldiers. The United States sent our soldiers to fight an enemy that was really not our enemy. And then expose them to radiation poisoning. If I was a soldier, I wouldn't be a soldier. Be no way in hell. I don't know if Canada still takes draft dodgers. Well, they don't have draft dodgers, but deserters. During Vietnam War, you had draft dodgers and deserters going to Canada. The Canadian government would not send them back. Would they do that now? I doubt it. If you could get to Cuba, you'd be all right. If you could get to Venezuela, you'd be all right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a bunch of I think it's mostly from YouTube, but audio files. And it's going to last about an hour and 10 minutes. And I hope it opens your eyes. Afterwards, there'll be time to talk about it. And if anybody wants to call in, feel free to call in. area code 347-215-6231. And that will be at about, close to 1:30. Close to an hour and 10 minutes. So here we go.
You're thinking that what we did not inflict pain and suffering on suspects in Europe and Japan?
I would hope we didn't waterboard people. I would hope that's
we did do Hiroshima. You think Truman is a war criminal for that?
Yeah.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay. Listen.
Here's what I think on the atom bomb. I think if you dropped an atom bomb 15 miles offshore and you said the next one's coming and hitting you, then I would think it's okay. To drop one on a city and kill 100,000 people?
You think they would?
I think that's
criminal.
criminal.
For more on the A-bomb anniversary, I'm joined by Jacob Hornberger. He's the president of the Future of Freedom Foundation. Good to see you, Jacob. So, over 10 years ago, you wrote a very interesting article entitled "The War Crimes of Hiroshima and Nagasaki." But the way that many people justify what happened is they say, look, by dropping the bomb, we were able to save hundreds, thousands of lives, not just here in the U.S., but also in Japan. And RT actually got to speak to the last Enola Gay crew member, Theodore Van Kirk. Listen to what he said about that.
Okay. My next door neighbor came over here and he found out what I did, dropping the atomic bomb. And he came over here at 6 o'clock one morning, pounding on my door. Says, I just found out what you did. You saved my life. And I said, well, you pound on my door at 6 o'clock again. I won't save it. That's all I can say. But everybody who's in the Pacific at the time will come up to me and say, you saved my life.
But you go as far as to say that the perpetrators of this should be punished. I mean, talk about the sort of disconnect between your opinion and Theodore Van Kirk's.
Well, in any war, we know that soldiers are going to die. That's the nature of war. There's also principles involved, though, with respect to how war should be waged. And civilized nations have come to comply with those restrictions. For example, we don't allow the raping of women, soldiers to rape women, or to pillage villages, or to kill non-combatants. That's a basic principle. You don't kill non-combatants. Wars are waged between soldiers. Bill Calley.
Would you say that in an unconventional war, you could link it an unconventional war like the ones in Iraq and Afghanistan, where you sometimes can't make that differentiation between soldiers and civilians or militants and civilians?
Well, we're talking about something completely different. In World War II, that was a conventional war. This was a war between nation states, Japan, Germany, against the Allied powers. What they did, the Allied powers, President Truman specifically, he specifically targeted women, children, old people, and said, we're going to kill them in order to save the lives of soldiers. You couldn't find a better example of a war crime. I mean, imagine if war was being waged on that basis where General Patton had said, well, to save my men, I'm going to kill these women over here.
So why don't high-level officials then, if that's the case, acknowledge this, bring this to the forefront as you have?
Well, because it's too difficult to admit that the U.S. government committed a war crime and that the President of the United States committed a war crime. If this had been done by the Germans, if the Germans had dropped atomic bombs on American cities and lost the war, you can rest assured they would have been indicted at Nuremberg and prosecuted and convicted for that, because you don't attack non-combatants. That's what William Calley was indicted and convicted for in Vietnam, where he killed these women and children. Well, there's no difference in principle between an infantryman that does this and a pilot that does this.
Now, this is the first time that the United States actually sent a representative, U.S. ambassador to Japan, John Roos, to the annual ceremony, but at the same time, the State Department refuses to apologize. But on the flip side of that, critics of the ambassador going over there say just this action is a sort of unsaid apology that should have never happened. What do you make of that?
I don't think it even comes close to an apology. I don't think you'll ever see a U.S. official apologizing for what they did at Hiroshima and Nagasaki. I think it's just a matter of sympathizing with the horrors of war. It's sort of like Ronald Reagan going over to the gravesite of German soldiers and laying some wreaths there saying, look, war is a horrible thing and there's people that die on both sides. I think this is all that this is about, is sending our ambassador over there to this procession. Is it different? Yes. Is it an apology? Absolutely not. And it should be.
And it's historic. It's different from the rest. No one's arguing that. But experts have gone so far as to say that this is going to strengthen ties between the United States and Japan. This is just a sign that we're moving toward a nuclear-free world. Would you agree with this assumption?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's just a nice way to say, let's commemorate the deaths of these people. But in terms of changing the mindsets of people, I mean, keep in mind also that we're dealing with entirely new generations today. I mean, this is 60 years ago. I think what we need to do, our generations today, is figure out ways to deactivate what governments are doing, and especially here in the United States. That's what we, the libertarian community in the United States, is focused on, is reining in the federal government, our own government. I think that's what people all over the world need to do, is they need to focus on how to rein in their own governments.
Do you think Barack Obama faces a political risk by even making the decision to send the ambassador over there? Because what you will hear from his critics is this is the apologetic president. This is the president that goes to Europe, the president that goes to the Middle East and apologizes for America. Do you think that he faces any kind of risk politically with this? I don't think so. I mean, there'll be your standard conservatives that'll make that point, but simply because you send an ambassador of your particular government to a site that commemorates the death of 300,000 people, I don't think that communicates any apology whatsoever. I don't think he's going to have any negative political fallback on this. You know, it's very interesting because the more that I was reading about, people's perceptions over there in Hiroshima about the ambassador being there, the ones that painted in a positive light said, well, maybe one day President Barack Obama, would come there. Why has it taken not only so long to send an ambassador there, but isn't this something that should be acknowledged on the highest level, if for nothing more than to pay some sort of respect to the Japanese people and the victims of this? I think that point is so well taken. I mean, I'm so glad to hear you say that. I think the Japanese would just like an acknowledgement of the pain they suffered through this. I mean, it's just enormous. We can't even imagine what this nuclear holocaust did to these two cities, to the old people, the women, the children. These were defenseless cities. And just to have that acknowledgement of saying, hey, we know what you went through. We're here to sympathize with the pain you went through, the loss you went through, I think means a tremendous amount to those people. Jacob Hornberger, very good to have your analysis today on RT.
What they found is that in Fallujah, a town in Iraq, which was viciously attacked by American forces in November 2004 with all kind of horrible war crimes, they found, the doctors who investigated there found levels of cancer, leukemia, and so on. They're beyond what they found in Hiroshima. That's pretty significant. Essentially unmentioned in the U.S. But it's the kind of thing you're taught not to think about, and not to say, and not to ask what it means. And there's a lot like that.
That was a financial target in a war. What do you think the globalists do when they attack a country? They bomb the government buildings, water treatment, power facilities, government systems, financial systems. Remember when Clinton bombed Belgrade, Serbia, blew up TV stations with people in them? See, the truth is, I don't like doublethink. I don't like hypocrisy. Oh, it's bad when the North Vietnamese tortured our people, but it's good when we torture. Or it's bad when the Russians have been caught torturing, but it's good when our government tortures. See, this is mental illness. Oh, it's okay when Rush Limbaugh gobbles 100 Oxycontins a day, enough to kill 7 to 8 full-size horses, but when your 16-year-old gets caught with some, 5 years, 10 years in prison. See, it's okay to bomb Dresden and Tokyo and with firebombs and Hiroshima and Nagasaki with A-bombs, even after Japan was trying to surrender unconditionally. But then it's bad, if you believe the fable, for Osama bin Laden to have suicide hijackers fly into buildings. See, this is sickening level of hypocrisy. Now, that's a side issue in and of itself. That is a complete and total side issue compared to Limbaugh's lack of understanding of history. Now, I'm going to play this clip, and we're going to come back and break down why he's wrong historically. And I'm going to go through just a brief gestalt of the history of Western warfare. We don't have time to look at other cultures. Now, history's so complex, I don't want to oversimplify this, but let me just state a fact here. There is scorched earth enslavement, salted earth systems like the Romans had, where if a country or a region or a tribe resisted, they would go in and kill all the men down to ages 10 to 8 years old. They would even then salt the earth in regional areas so they couldn't grow crops. But even most Romans said that that was immoral, and that only came later in the decline of the Roman Empire. If you look at the Middle Ages, if you look at what then came out in the Renaissance after that, armies lined up of men, and they fought each other, and they had rules of war, and you did not target civilians, and if you did, you were executed. George Washington, that I guess Limbaugh would call a coward, would hang or shoot, and this happened, any U.S. troops that engaged in any type of war crimes, raping, stealing, any of that. Now, it wasn't until World War II that civilian population started getting targeted, and I want to tell you the story of how that happened. So, no, not in the good old days, Limbaugh. Not in the good old days. This didn't start till World War II. We're going to come back and break that down. The most militarized, vicious societies always develop something called chivalry. Rules of war, because they don't want their families being overrun and slaughtered and killed. The men say, we're just going to kill each other, and may the best man win. And that is the great expression of true warriors. And I'm not trying to compare the mafia, but at least they have that code, the Italian mafia, who's been supplanted by the Russian mafia, the Mexican mafia, the rest of it. They've been legendary for not killing people's women and children. The Mexican cartels, that's who they target. And it's because in the rules of war, leave the women and children out of this. Don't drop bombs on them. Now, Hitler was a bad guy, but mainline history is a fact. He would not bomb the British cities. When the Blitzkrieg began, he would only bomb military sites, and then the British launched an attack on Berlin, on civilian centers, and it was later declassified to make Hitler attack British cities, knowing that that would actually cause their morale to go up and steel them for full-bore war. And then, of course, Germany was completely leveled, so was Japan. And the public bought into it because it was seen as a struggle for survival. Total war. Go back to World War I, it was men lined up killing each other in the trenches. So this total war thing that Limbaugh calls the good old days is only about 65 years old. And in the old days, when the Japanese bombed cities in China, it was called barbarous and horrible until we then did it. So the point is to round up kids and shoot them, or to put thousands of men in containers for 3 days so they die of exposure. That's torture. That's murder. That's wrong. Because then it's going to happen to our troops, and how do we then criticize it? You want rules of war, ladies and gentlemen. And to hear Limbaugh up there, this addled former drug addict who's hypocritical, getting off on war, getting off on death, and saying, our military is incompetent, they need to kill people and break things and be indiscriminate. Well, if you knew anything, Limbaugh, the Pentagon doesn't have a public stance on not killing civilians because they're wimps. They want to win the hearts and minds of these occupied countries. These are guerrilla wars. These are not beating the German military. This is not a classical, front-on assault. These are occupations. So that causes people to resist you. So that's why the Pentagon has a stated policy of not wanting that, because they want to win the hearts and minds, dummy. And so you get up there and say, this is great, this is cool, this is manly. I can't tell you how many other chicken hawks, like Limbaugh, who got deferments for a boil on his rear end, I can't tell you how many of these chicken hawks think war is manly. I saw a report a few years ago about Richard Pearl, the Prince of Darkness, at a cocktail party, coming up to women, bragging that he ordered bombings and was manly. An obese, self-propelled stomach who couldn't do one chin-up if his life depended on it, bragging about killing people. Okay?
It's not about justice. It's not about agenda. It's not about mobilizing people. It's about dialing for corporate dollars. These two parties have sold the U.S. government and the American people to the highest bidders.
The American public just doesn't know what's going on, and the American public doesn't care. Unless they've got a son, brother, husband, wife, sister over there, they just don't care. It doesn't touch them.
From the very beginning, there was a conviction that Saddam Hussein was a bad person and that he needed to go.
He says that going after Saddam Hussein was topic A 10 days after the inauguration, 8 months before September 11th.
There are memos. One of them, marked secret, says, plan for post-Saddam Iraq.
Nation building.
Absolutely.
So they discussed an occupation of Iraq.
In January and February of 2001.
And you have somebody, George Tenet, acknowledging in his book that he knew that the administration was deceiving the American people into a situation that is murdering young men and women from this country and others. That George Tenet and Dick Cheney and Condoleezza Rice and George Bush et al. Should be in fucking jail.
Those weapons of mass destruction got to be somewhere. Nope, no weapons over there. Maybe under here.
Wait. If you had known then that there were no WMDs, would you still have gone on?
I would still have thought it right to remove them. I mean, obviously you would have had to use and deploy different arguments about the nature of the threat.
First, it was about weapons of mass destruction. Then, it was terrorism. Now, oil has become a reason for the war in Iraq.
Obviously, the Middle East itself, not only Iraq, but the entire region, is an important supplier of energy, oil in particular.
Why the fuck are we there? We better get that oil, right? The U.S. Army is not the fucking Peace Corps. The Marines are not the Peace Corps. That's not why we're in Iraq. We're in Iraq for money and oil. Look at any other war in the history of the world and tell me it's not about money.
It was one of those things that's like recommended to you on the side, where it's like, you know, if I were a smart Marine, I would I'd have an AK or something in my vehicle just in case, you know, somebody accidentally gets killed, you know, I wouldn't get in trouble for it because, oh, well, it's obviously an insurgent, he has a weapon, so you're in the clear because you killed an insurgent.
Teeth on the corners of his mouth. He's got like droopy eyes that stick out of his head. Pretty fucking ugly. Fucking ugly looking. Ugly fucking kid.
Last year, 4 soldiers were jailed for mistreating Iraqi civilians. The men took pictures of the ill treatment. One showed a terrified man suspended from the prongs of a forklift truck, draped in a cargo net.
We're so self-important. So self-important. Everybody's going to save something now. Save the trees, save the bees, save the whales, save those snails. And the greatest arrogance of all, save the planet. What? Are these fucking people kidding me? Save the planet? We don't even know how to take care of ourselves yet. We haven't learned how to care for one another. We're going to save the fucking planet? I'm getting tired of that shit. Tired of that shit. Tired.
A 20-year-old allegedly drugged and viciously gang raped by her Halliburton co-workers at Camp Hope inside Baghdad's Green Zone. Jamie Lee Jones says shortly after she was raped, Halliburton KBR security locked her in a shipping cell for nearly 24 hours without food and water, guarded by two men with machine guns.
I was sexually assaulted, so he held me down and I was raped.
Startling figures straight from the U.S. government show 1 out of 3 women soldiers are sexually assaulted in the military.
Commanders don't encourage the women to come forward, or the opposite. They pretty much tell them to move on with their life, that it won't be good for their careers, and they made them feel guilty, and some of them have even been prosecuted for coming forward and reporting it.
One afternoon in March, 4 soldiers walked through the trees and approached this house. Here, according to specialist James Barker's statement, he and another soldier took it in turns to rape the 14-year-old girl. In another room, the girl's parents and 5-year-old sister were shot dead.
And if you would talk about, oh, these people killing American soldiers in Iraq, they're terrorists. Not terrorists, they're wearing sandals. And they got an AK. And they got 14-year-old boys building bombs to kill these American soldiers because we've killed their families. I was ordered to kill innocent people. We killed innocent people. When they shot at us, we shot everybody.
We reach a level where we can create amazing technology, and we use that technology to pepper bomb cities full of civilians. And you know, we're at the cutting edge of evolution. We can kill more people in one goal than ever before. Hey! And this is what we do in the name of freedom. We think it's okay for children to sign their names on bombs which end up on children just like them in the Lebanon. But we don't want to talk about that. Hey, here's a game show. Watch this. Shut up. Hey, honey, quick. She's going for the car. But we don't want to talk about this. Oh, no. Hey, quick, honey. There's a picture of Paris Hilton naked in the back of a car. Quick. Was that the car that lady just went for? Watch this. Shut up. Don't let's talk about this and get all moral about it. Let's talk about Janet Jackson's breast at the Super Bowl. Hey, the moral fiber of America is collapsing. Oh, no, that's the moral. This is fighting for peace. This is just collateral damage. Don't worry about it.
Barely able to breathe, yet Fatima Ahmed spoke for a city. Sky News told the story of the baby born with 2 heads in May last year. Her mother, Shakria, pleaded for help. Why was her child one of an increasing number born with deformities since the war, like this? And this is just a snapshot of children with problems, all born within the last 8 months. Look at the hand of this child, with its misshapen limb and too many fingers. Some of the other pictures we've obtained are far too shocking to show.
The couple has a baby girl who was born with a birth defect on one hand. Her mother is convinced that it is on account of Gerard's exposure to DU.
And I saw a baby. I think I have the picture, whose hand was identical to my daughter's. An Iraqi baby who had been exposed to depleted uranium. For me, that was the proof. My baby's hands and the hands of that Iraqi baby.
It has been said that when in the course of human events, an oppression so revolts its subjects that it becomes necessary to alter or abolish the means of that tyranny. Is it that time when our Bill of Rights is defiled every day? When our adventures abroad threaten our security at home? When the Federal Reserve keeps our free nation enslaved by debt? When the people of the world tremble under the thumb of corporate imperialism? And now, our nation is drifting dangerously from freedom to fascism. As Iraq veterans against the war, we are resisting an occupation we once risked our lives for. We swore to support and defend the Constitution of the United States of America, but we found out the hard way that the greatest enemies of the Constitution are not to be found in the sands of some far-off land, but rather right here at home. We are inspiring a generation of young Americans to find a better way to serve their country than dying for empire. And by supporting those who are actively resisting, we inspire further resistance and ensure that soldiers still have the right, as is their duty, to disobey illegal orders. We know that the greatest threat to American security is the current corruption of our government. No politician has ever ended a war. Civil rights were won in this country not by any legislator, but by a movement. But our efforts as a movement must become unified and deliberate to fully withdraw our support and compliance. Be it with your lives, labor, or tax dollars, stop investing in your own oppression. Guard your communities from the police state. Don't waste a single vote or a single dollar on the two-party system. Do not be content merely to grumble and to march while they are using fear, force, and violence as weapons of oppression. We must embrace the opportunity to resist civilly while we still can. Challenge our force-fed culture of unquestioning conformity and compliance. And embrace a world that is not defined by the politics of fear, our obedience-producing schools, or the false prophets of the corporate media. As we have been awakened, we must stir the sleeping masses. As the forces of oppression are diligent, so must we toil. As they are committed, we must surpass them. As they step up their efforts, we must rise up to defeat them as a unified movement. We will not be silent. We will not obey. We will not let our government destroy our humanity. We will not wait another moment in fear to stand up for what we know to be right. It is time we start meeting oppression with resistance.
A new bill quietly introduced by Congress last week is causing quite a stir among civil liberties groups. The brainchild of Senators John McCain and Joe Lieberman. The bill would give the U.S. government the power to indefinitely detain terror suspects without charge or trial and to interrogate them for their quote-unquote intelligence value. And it doesn't make a distinction between U.S. citizens and non-citizens. So does this sound kind of scary to you? Well, joining us now to talk about that is RT's Lucy Kavanaugh. Lucy, hello. So some concerns. I mean, this is kind of a no-duh question, I guess, but there are some concerns, and what are the concerns here?
Yeah, well, I mean, people see this as yet another example of overreaction by the government in the name of national security. I mean, the frightening thing about this legislation is that it effectively gives the U.S. military the right to detain American citizens in the name of national security with absolutely no recourse to correct the situation if someone was, for example, detained in error. The bill is worded so broadly that it basically could, throw you or I or anyone into jail for being perceived as the war on terror. And it doesn't really set any limits in terms of who makes the decision about that perception. And so, if, say, we speak out really strongly against the government and it's somehow perceived as being a threat to the United States, we can see ourselves locked up, held by the military, interrogated, held indefinitely, and all without a basic right to, an attorney or a public trial, et cetera. It also begs the question of what happens when you detain someone in error, and also what happens, what mechanisms are in place to prevent this from being politically used in a politicized sort of way. I mean, could we see this legislation used to stifle dissent? I mean, Tea Partiers often say fairly critical things of the U.S. government. In its extreme, could we see this legislation used as something to stifle that kind of dissent? What about 9/11 truthers? What about anti-war protesters? And so, the question is limits and oversight, and this legislation unfortunately doesn't set any limits, and it doesn't really, allow any process for these kinds of decisions to be overseen in a system of checks and balances.
What about people who just simply come on and say, God, I hate this country? I mean, and even they maybe could be, because of the broad language, broad scope of the language which you had brought up earlier, they could even potentially be, I guess, put on this watch list by the government.
Well, I mean, that's the threat, and that's always the problem that you have when lawmakers legislate out of panic. I mean, we've seen the reaction to the Christmas Day bomber and the guy that drove the airplane into the IRS building. We had the Pentagon shooter, and I think, Congress is a very, very reactive body. And a lot of times when something happens that scares Americans, a lawmaker says, okay, hey, this is a frightening situation. I'm up for re-election. I want to look like I'm being really tough on terrorism and like I'm standing up to the terrorists. And so there's this rush to sort of, quickly legislate without thinking through a piece of legislation. And a lot of times we end up subverting values that we take for granted in this country, like democracy and freedom, in the name of national security. And I think, Americans definitely want the government to be proactive in terms of, addressing the terror threat. But I don't remember going to the polls and voting to, take away my constitutional rights. Do you?
We have just about a minute left, but you brought the examples of I call him the Underoos bomber, and also Joe Stack. But because of events like those, incidents like those, isn't there kind of a need for a piece of legislation like this?
Well, again, legislation like this is done out of fear and out of panic, and it's not thought through. The consequences of this, when you look at the domestic terror threat, a lot of folks, and I'm not justifying this, any sort of violence is completely inexcusable, but a lot of people are, trending towards violent reactions to what they perceive as a loss of their liberties to the federal government. And something like this is not going to win you any friends by people who already feel like they're sacrificing their rights and liberties in the name of terror, And the ironic thing is you'd think that this would be maybe a partisan issue where Democrats or Republicans would be different on this. And unfortunately, with things like this, both parties seem to work in lock and step. We saw the passage of the Patriot Act with virtually no debate last week. And, I don't know if this thing is going to pass, but again, there's just very little difference between the two parties on an issue like this.
RT, please have enough. We will see if this thing passes. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
I will promise you this, that if we have not gotten our troops out by the time I am president, it is the first thing I will do. I will get our troops home. We will bring an end to this war. You can take that to the bank.
Well, President Obama has ordered 17,000 more American troops to Afghanistan. It's the first stage of a build-up that will eventually see 60,000 U.S. troops deployed to the country.
The U.S. president has revealed his plan for Afghanistan, escalating the war at the fastest possible pace.
It is in our vital national interest to send an additional 30,000 U.S. troops to Afghanistan.
When I was in Iraq, I saw the devastation that our invasion and occupation had met out upon the Iraqi people. I saw and at times participated in the dehumanization and degradation of the Iraqi people. By robbing others of their inherent dignity, by denying them respect, and by treating them as a less than human other, we ultimately robbed ourselves of our own dignity, humanity, and compassion.
You roll into Baghdad, every single big apartment building is blown up. Every single apartment building in Baghdad has been broken to the ground by artillery and airplanes bombing. You cannot meet someone in Iraq who has not lost a family member. Could you imagine what we had done in America if in 9/11 everybody in America lost a family member? What would we be doing? Would we be talking about war? No, we'd be in the streets with weapons. And so people talk about, oh, these people killing American soldiers in Iraq, they're terrorists. They're not terrorists, they're wearing sandals. And they got an AK. And they got 14-year-old boys building bombs to kill these American soldiers because we killed their families. People just don't wake up and want to go kill people.
I was ordered multiple times by commissioned officers and non-commissioned officers to shoot unarmed civilians if their presence made me feel uncomfortable. The primary loyalty is not to democracy or to the flag or to America or to the Iraqi people or to the rule of law. It is to each other's safety at the expense of everything else.
There is a cost to this war, and this cost is being paid in American blood, in my soldiers' blood, and that is not okay.
From my perspective, it didn't seem to make any sense what we did. We didn't accomplish anything.
A few months after I was there, a lot of things weren't sitting right with me. The command structure, the missions that we were getting didn't make any sense. We're going after people, Mujahideen or Muj, and they didn't have any idea which ones were the right ones. We're kicking in the wrong doors, terrifying children, helicopters screaming over their heads at night, and I'm trying to calm the women and children while the men were dragged and separated out and completely humiliated in front of their families.
9/11 was a lie. I know it. We're soldiers. We know it.
And on March 21st of 2003, my military service was hijacked in an unconstitutional order to invade the sovereign nation of Iraq. This is a slap in the face to every service member who feels used because he was told he was going to go fight for his country and then was sent to go kick in the doors of innocent people unprovoked in the middle of the night to draw fire into their house so that we might have somebody to shoot back at.
If the media was not biased, this film would be shown here so that you could then make a decision. Show them both sides of the story and then let the human being make the decision whether they want their kids there or not. Don't show me one side and say it's patriotism, it's courageous. Nothing I did in Iraq was courageous. I brought fear into people's homes. I traveled with a .50 caliber weapon every single day and slept with a pistol underneath my pillow. Tell me what is so courageous about that.
And I tried hard to be proud of my service, but all I could feel was shame. And racism could no longer mask the reality of the occupation. These were people. These were human beings. I've since been plagued by guilt anytime I see an elderly man, like the one who couldn't walk, who we rolled onto a stretcher and told the Iraqi police to take him away. I feel guilt anytime I see a mother with her children, like the one who cried hysterically and screamed that we are worse than Saddam as we forced her from her home. I feel guilt anytime I see a young girl, like the one I grabbed by the arm and dragged into the street. We were told we were fighting terrorists. The real terrorist was me, and the real terrorism is this occupation.
Funding the war is killing the troops. I mean, if you really think about it, it's really, really blatantly obvious, and it's really stupid that we have to say this. But we do. We have to get down to basics. We have to break it down Barney style, as we say.
When I joined the military, I raised my hand and said that I would protect the Constitution of the United States and its people, and against foreign and domestic enemies. But guess what? I did not raise my hand to protect private companies like KBR and put my life on the line so they can make a buck. When are we going to realize that people fighting in Iraq against us, they're not terrorists, they're soldiers? What we do if somebody invaded us? I know I will pick up my weapon and fight against them. What the hell we call them? Terrorists? These people want their country back. Let's give them their country back.
I won't even talk to politicians about the war, because there ain't no point in it. Democrat, Republican, they're all profiteers of war. Even lots of anti-war organizations are profiting off my brother's pain.
I'm embarrassed at the state of politics in America that it's come to that. We have to talk to Congress like they're fucking children.
We've got a responsibility to the honor of this country and to the honor of every man and woman who has served in Iraq and ever served in our military to not leave them with anything less than the honor that they deserve.
Honor? Are you kidding me? You saying that it's an honor to die in Iraq and to fight a war that we started and we're in the wrong? You're going to tell me that it's an honor to serve in Iraq when private contractors get paid $100,000 plus and drive $60,000 vehicles inside the base while soldiers are outside the base rolling and patrolling and losing their lives? Is that honor? Are you kidding me?
Those who send us to war do not have to pull a trigger or lob a mortar round. They do not have to fight the war, they merely have to sell the war. They need a public who is willing to send their soldiers into harm's way. They need soldiers who are willing to kill and be killed without question. They can spend millions on a single bomb, but that bomb only becomes a weapon when the ranks of the military are willing to follow orders to use it. They can send every last soldier anywhere on earth, but there will only be a war if soldiers are willing to fight. And the ruling class, the billionaires who profit from human suffering, care only about expanding their wealth, controlling the world economy, understand that their power lies only in their ability to convince us that war, oppression, and exploitation is in our interest.
Our freedom comes from ourselves. When we make the decision to speak our mind.
This is well within the rights that service members have, but not very many service members know that they have.
As soon as I got out of the military, I joined an organization called Iraq Veterans Against the War, which aside from calling for full immediate withdrawal of all U.S. forces from Iraq, also calls for full support and benefits for returning veterans.
We have members across the country and overseas, in Germany and Iraq. Less than 4 years ago, there were 7 of us, and today there are over 1,200. Our membership has more than doubled in the past year and is continuing to grow.
So we do have
resistance movement. We do have dissent within the ranks. It's happening for each one of us who goes public. There's probably 100, who are resisting quietly.
Let's be brutally honest. Our leaders aren't going to end the occupation. It's going to be us that ends the occupation. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't think as a 24-year-old kid I should go to jail for not wanting to kill people.
I had a personal experience after one of the talks that I did with a man. He came up to me after that, and he told me he was an Iraqi man. And he said that he was from the area around Balad, and I was stationed in Balad. And I just couldn't help it. Just all of a sudden, I hugged the guy. And I said that I was sorry, that I was so sorry. And I ended up crying right there to this perfect stranger. And he told me it was okay. He told me it was okay. And that was redemption.
To me, it's this phenomenon that we're witnessing is actually a natural evolution. And any time you organize human beings to come together to use violence as a way of conflict resolution, you will have a breakdown of that organization. Peace is not a political process, and it's certainly not a militaristic process.
I refuse to participate in the Iraq occupation.
The real enemies are not in some distant land. They're not people whose names we don't know and cultures we don't understand. The enemy is people we know very well and people we can identify. The enemy is a system that wages war when it's profitable. The enemy is the CEOs who lay us off from our jobs when it's profitable. It's the insurance companies who deny us health care when it's profitable. It's the banks who take away our homes when it's profitable. Our enemy is not 5,000 miles away. They are right here at home. If we organize and fight with our sisters and brothers, we can stop this war, we can stop this government, and we can create a better world.
There's a term, once a Marine, always a Marine, but there's also the term, eat the apple, F the core. I don't work for you no more.
This society is so greedy, we're willing to go to war. We're willing to go places and send these big metal machines that kill people and fuck people up just so we can make more money. I mean, I've heard it argued, and argued successfully, that our society runs on war. Mm-hmm. It runs on the domination of the other parts of the world. And literally, that's the only way you can control a gigantic chunk of the globe. You have to keep everybody down. And that's what our society is based on as far as our globalization, schematic that's been laid out by all these Republicans and all these Democrats and all these people that, are pretending to be our leaders and pretending to look for. None of these people have had these experiences. None of these people feel connected to everybody. They're still, even the best ones are still operating within a very old framework. And a framework that's set up by ignorance. It's a foolish framework. The idea that it should be okay to go somewhere and engage in war to protect a society that wants to go places and engage in war. That's insane. That's insane. Because you're saying, that's automatically saying that the lives of the people here are worth more than the lives of the people everywhere else. And they're all one thing. They're all exactly the same.
When a TV cameraman came up to me and asked me some questions, I told him right off the bat, I said, I'm really glad to be home, I'm proud of my service, but I am against the war in Iraq. And I know that some family members and some friends weren't pleased that I said that. I thought it was maybe inappropriate at that time. But if every soldier comes home and they just say that they're glad to be home, then no one's going to know the truth about what's going on in Iraq.
Flags are bits of colored cloth that governments use, first to shrink wrap people's brains, and then as ceremonial shrouds to bury the dead.
The U.S. military as an institution is very corrupt and is built upon spreading death. To me, the idea of having a force like the U.S. Army participating in nation building is just asinine. I mean, we're nation destroyers. That's what we're trained to do.
We were all congratulated after we had our first kills. My company commander personally congratulated me. This is the same individual who has stated that whoever gets their first kill by stabbing them to death will get a 4-day pass when we return from Iraq.
I've heard numerous circumstances of civilians getting killed, and then soldiers and Marines subsequently placing weapons on their bodies or placing wire on them.
Army Private First Class Lavina Johnson would have turned 23 this month, but 3 years ago, the African-American teenager from Missouri was found dead in Bladera, just a few weeks short of her 20th birthday. Her body was found in a tent belonging to the private military contractor Kellogg Brown & Root. She'd abrasions all over her body, a broken nose, a black eye, burned hands, loose teeth, acid burns on her genitals, a bullet hole in her head. The Army labeled Lavina Johnson's death a suicide. They told her parents she died of self-inflicted non-combat injuries.
Say it again. Say again what happened. Say what? Like what was going on? What was like being a guard there? Yeah. That place, man. It's fucking world famous now.
As far as I'm concerned, they're all guilty. You know what? They should have kicked Saddam out themselves. Instead, we're there doing the fucking job. Fuck them, dude. Anyone with a fucking rag on their head is very girl. She's probably like 15 years old.
See it, right?
Well, I hadn't been touched yet. She was fucking prime.
Oh.
So, guys, he started pimping around for $50 a shot. I think at the end of the day, he made like $500 before she hung herself. Really?
4 soldiers walked through the trees and approached this house. Here, according to Specialist James Barker's statement, he and another soldier took it in turns to rape the 14-year-old girl. In another room, the girl's parents and 5-year-old sister were shot dead.
Barker's statement said after Green had killed the 2 adults and the little girl, he came into the room where the teenager was being sexually assaulted. He had an AK-47 rifle in his hand. He said, "They're all dead. I killed them." He put the weapon down, raped the 14-year-old, and then shot her dead too.
Before they left, they poured kerosene over the girl's body and set it alight. They returned to their checkpoint, and Barker said he grilled some chicken wings.
4 years ago, at the age of 19, Ms. Jamie Lee Jones signed a contract to become an employee of KBR, then a Halliburton subsidiary. Ms. Jones arrived in Iraq in July of 2005 and was housed in barracks with 400 men and only a few women. 4 days after her arrival, Ms. Jones was drugged and gang raped. After Ms. Jones reported the rape to her supervisors, she was locked in a shipping container with an armed guard and prohibited any contact with the outside world. They locked her in a container.
According to the Center for Defense Information, 51% of your federal income taxes go specifically to military spending, not healthcare or education, but war.
So cute, little puppy.
Come on, you're almost there,
That's fucked up.
Why was her child one of an increasing number born with deformities since the war like this? Massive growth which was rapidly spreading across the little girl's face. Case after case of differing deformities without any real explanation, except their parents' suspicions that the deformities were caused by chemicals such as white phosphorus used by the Americans during the war.
A Geiger counter will give a reading of between 5 and 15 pulses per minute in a typical environment. This depleted uranium round will trigger 10,000 pulses in about 40 seconds. This type of ammunition is radioactive because it is made of nuclear waste referred to as uranium-238 or depleted uranium. This material is left over from the processing of uranium-234 used for atomic bombs and uranium-235 used in nuclear power plants. Uranium-238 remains radioactive for 4.5 billion years, and its toxicity reveals itself as soon as particles are inhaled or ingested. Cancer and birth defects are the most common side effects.
We have an obligation to every last victim of this illegal aggression because all of this carnage has been done in our name. Since World War II, 90% of the casualties of war are unarmed civilians, a third of them children. Our victims have done nothing to us. From Palestine to Afghanistan to Iraq to Somalia to wherever our next target may be, their murders are not collateral damage. They are the nature of modern warfare. They don't hate us because of our freedom. They hate us because every day we are funding and committing crimes against humanity. The so-called war on terror is a cover for our military aggression to gain control of the resources of Western Asia. This is sending the poor of this country to kill the poor of those Muslim countries. This is trading blood for oil. This is genocide, and to most of the world, we are the terrorists. In these times, remaining silent on our responsibility to the world and its future is criminal. And in light of our complicity in the supreme crimes against humanity in Iraq and Afghanistan and ongoing violations of the UN Charter and international law, how dare any American criticize the actions of legitimate resistance to illegal occupation? Our so-called enemies in Afghanistan, Iraq, Palestine, our other colonies around the world, and our inner cities here at home are struggling against the oppressive hand of empire, demanding respect for their humanity. They are labeled insurgents or terrorists who are resisting rape and pillage by the white establishment, but they are our brothers and sisters in the struggle for justice. The civilians at the other end of our weapons don't have a choice, but American soldiers have choices. And while there may have been some doubt 5 years ago, today we know the truth. Our soldiers don't sacrifice for duty, honor, country. They sacrifice for Kellogg, Brown, and Root. They don't fight for America. They fight for their lives and their buddies beside them because we put them in a war zone. They're not defending our freedom. They're laying the foundation for 14 permanent military bases to defend the freedoms of ExxonMobil and British Petroleum. They're not establishing democracy. They're establishing the basis for an economic occupation to continue after the military occupation has ended. Thanks to American help, is defined by house raids, death squads, checkpoints, Iraqi society today, detentions, curfews, blood in the streets, and constant violence. We must dare to speak out in support of the Iraqi people who resist and endure the horrific existence we brought upon them through our bloodthirsty imperial crusade. We must dare to speak out in support of those American war resistors, the real military heroes who uphold their oath to defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, including those terrorist cells in Washington, D.C., more commonly known as the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. Frederick Douglass says, those who profess to favor freedom and yet depreciate agitation are plowing the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the roar of its many waters. The struggle may be a moral one, or it may be a physical. People who want crops without sun, or it may be both. But it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has, and it never will. Every one of us who keep demanding, keep fighting, keep thundering, keep plowing, keep speaking, keep struggling until justice is served. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace. No justice, no peace.
And I tried hard to be proud of my service, but all I could feel was shame. And racism could no longer mask the reality of the occupation. These were people, these were human beings. I've since been plagued by guilt anytime I see an elderly man, like the one who couldn't walk, who we rolled onto a stretcher and told the Iraqi police to take him away. I feel guilt anytime I see a mother with her children, like the one who cried hysterically and screamed that we are worse than Saddam as we forced her from her home. I feel guilt anytime I see a young girl, like the one I grabbed by the arm and dragged into the street. We were told we were fighting terrorists. The real terrorist was me, and the real terrorism was this occupation. Racism within the military has long been an important tool to justify the destruction and occupation of another country. It has long been used to justify the killing, subjugation, and torture of another people. Racism is a vital weapon employed by this government. It is a more important weapon than a rifle, a tank, a bomber, or a battleship. It is more destructive than an artillery shell, or a bunker buster, or a Tomahawk missile. While those weapons are created and owned by this government, they are harmless without people willing to use them. Those who send us to war do not have to pull a trigger or lob a mortar round. They do not have to fight the war, they merely have to sell the war. They need a public who is willing to send their soldiers into harm's way. They need soldiers who are willing to kill and be killed without question. They can spend millions on a single bomb, but that bomb only becomes a weapon when the ranks of the military are willing to follow orders to use it. They can send every last soldier anywhere on earth, but there will only be a war if soldiers are willing to fight. And the ruling class, the billionaires who profit from human suffering, care only about expanding their wealth, controlling the world economy, understand that their power lies only in their ability to convince us that war, oppression, and exploitation is in our interest. They understand that their wealth is dependent on their ability to convince the working class to die to control the market of another country. And convincing us to kill and die is based on their ability to make us think that we are somehow superior. Soldiers, sailors, Marines, airmen have nothing to gain from this occupation. The vast majority of people living in the U.S. have nothing to gain from this occupation. In fact, not only do we have nothing to gain, but we suffer more because of it. We lose limbs, endure trauma, and give our lives. Our families have to watch flag-draped coffins lowered into the earth. Millions in this country without health care, jobs, or access to education must watch this government squander over $450 million a day on this occupation. Poor and working people in this country are sent to kill poor and working people in another country to make the rich richer. And without racism, soldiers would realize that they have more in common with the Iraqi people than they do with the billionaires who send us to war. I threw families onto the street in Iraq, only to come home and find families thrown onto the street in this country, in this tragic and unnecessary foreclosure crisis. We need to wake up and realize that our real enemies are not in some distant land. They're not people whose names we don't know and cultures we don't understand. The enemy is people we know very well and people we can identify. The enemy is a system that wages war when it's profitable. The enemy is the CEOs who lay us off from our jobs when it's profitable. It's the insurance companies who deny us health care when it's profitable. It's the banks who take away our homes when it's profitable. Our enemy is not 5,000 miles away. They are right here at home. If we organize and fight with our sisters and brothers, we can stop this war, we can stop this government, and we can create a better world.
Till now, the diagnosis is not settled for this child. He complains from prolonged fever and this wasting.
We have heard that 500,000 children have died. I mean, that's more children than died in Hiroshima. And you know, is the price worth it?
I think this is a very hard choice, but we think the price is worth it.
Worth it because she believes the sanctions are working.
In November 1997, former U.S. Attorney General Ramsey Clark headed a delegation of the International Action Center on his 7th trip to Iraq to investigate the continued effects of the United Nations sanctions on the population. We were shocked by what we saw, an almost total absence of medicines, medical supplies, and spare parts for the equipment. Despite the heroic efforts of medical personnel, babies, children, and the chronically ill continue to die in vast numbers. The United States government claims that Saddam Hussein is to blame for the crisis. What is the real cause of the suffering? The sanctions. They are an extension of the 1991 United States war against Iraq. The goal was to cripple Iraq's infrastructure and make civilian life unsustainable.
We demonstrated the capacity of technology to cripple a country without ever setting foot on it in the Persian Gulf. It's important to recognize that because it goes hand in hand with the sanctions. When we merely say that we flew 110,000 aerial sorties in 42 days, one every 30 seconds on the average, 24 hours a day, we ignore what we really did.
As officials said, the death toll was now 288, with many more to come. The trucks kept filling up and driving away, past waiting relatives who knew they might never be able to identify the bodies of their loved ones. The community of Amaria filled one of the first of many funerals with gunfire in sign of grief and fury, and with angry words aimed through foreign journalists. "My mother, she's gone," shouted this young man. This woman asked, "Could not all your modern technology tell you that there were children and women here?" Bill Blakemore, ABC News, in the Amaria district of Baghdad.
We destroyed every silo for grain or anything else storing food in the whole country. We destroyed all the storage and processing of food plants throughout the country. Even dates, the world's biggest exporter of dates. Famous processing and packaging plants in Baghdad, deliberately destroyed. We didn't want them to be able to feed themselves for a long, long time. We're all aware of the famous little powdered milk plant.
The United States government says that in this factory here you are making chemical weapons. Is that true?
No, that's not true. They are lying. Because this is milk for children. This powder, milk of children.
Nothing else was made? Only this in the factory?
Yes, and you can see it yourself.
With the only factory in the Middle East to produce powdered milk, they were producing about 17% of their powdered milk requirements. We destroyed that, cut off all the milk, and malnutrition of the mothers immediately jeopardized all of the infants. 70% of the pregnant women, even today in Iraq, suffer anemia.
The death rate for children has soared compared to 1989, the last year before sanctions. One of the biggest causes of death in Iraqi children today is diarrhea and dysentery due to the untreated drinking water. Iraq's water purification plants were heavily bombed in the war, and many that were repaired have broken down. The United Nations bans the import of spare parts and chlorine into Iraq to purify water. We saw the effects of this policy in the hospitals.
This is the second attack form of acute bloody diarrhea, amoebic dysentery. Most of them are due to contamination of water. Is malnourished, anemic, underweight with a developmental delay.
Diarrhea and vomiting.
Do you have tap water there?
No.
You can see the conditions of these children shouldn't happen anywhere, and it's caused by the sanctions the United States government insists upon.
The U.S. military used 800 tons of depleted uranium weapons in the war, causing a rise in cancers among the population. Why does the United States government spend $50 billion a year to patrol the Persian Gulf and keep Iraq locked down?
Please raise their hand.
Why does it pressure the Security Council to maintain the total blockade? We need to look back on the recent history of Iraq. For many years, U.S., British, and French oil companies owned 95% of Iraq's oil while they maintained a puppet monarchy in power. The people lived lives of extreme poverty. When the Iraqi people carried out a revolution in 1958 against King Faisal II, U.S. and Britain lost their stranglehold. They sent thousands of troops to the Middle East, but it was too late. Iraq had become a sovereign country. Iraq nationalized its oil and used the wealth to develop industry, modern sanitation, education, an excellent healthcare system, electricity, and highways. Iraqi women won new rights. The United States wants to return Iraq to its earlier status as a virtual colony in order to secure its control over the Gulf region's oil, which is 2/3 of the world's petroleum reserves.
Our involvement in the Gulf is not transitory. It predated Saddam Hussein's aggression and will survive it. Long after all our troops come home, there will be a lasting role for the United States in assisting the nations of the Persian Gulf.
There are those that would like to lift the sanctions. I am not among them.
Our main objective is lifting the sanctions, which has been very, very cruel on our people.
Why do you think Americans want to keep the sanctions?
That's their policy.
Why do you think?
Ask them. That's their policy. It's against the will of the international community. It's against the will of many other countries. I think they are making profits from that. But I don't want to make accusations.
Financial profits?
Yes.
Like how?
Who is selling oil instead of Iraq? Iraq had a share in the oil market. That share was stopped by the sanctions. Who is selling that?
Who?
They know very well that Saudi Arabia jumped from 5 million barrels a day to 8 million barrels a day. 3 million barrels, Iraq's share, have been added to the share of Saudi Arabia.
And we would take this to a war front to protect Saudi Arabia's making more money?
No, you are sharing that money. Everybody knows that.
Before the sanctions, Iraq used its $20 billion in annual oil exports to import 70% of the country's food and medicine. The cutting off of Iraq's oil by the Security Council has caused widespread hunger.
Starvation of civilians as a method of warfare is prohibited by international law. The sanctions are a violation of the Geneva Convention, the United Nations Charter, the Constitution of the World Health Organization, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the Charter of Economic Rights and Duties of the States.
It's not France, it's not Russia, it's the United States which is imposing these sanctions, which are killing their children by the hundreds of thousands. And we believe that the right policy for the United States government is to stop the sanctions, and that the people of this country who are having our tax dollars used to impose hunger and starvation are not really being spoken for in this current crisis.
But the UN has backed these sanctions.
Well, the United Nations for the last 6 or 7 years has become virtually a plaything for U.S. policy, and that's because of U.S. dominance in the aftermath of the collapse of the Soviet Union. That doesn't mean that the people of the Middle East or the people of the world really support U.S. policy.
Today's march that we're beginning now is a procession to commemorate the more than 500,000 children in Iraq who have died from the sanctions policy, a policy that's so linked. The growing hunger here in the U.S. is reflected 1,000 times in the starvation of more than 1 million people who died in Iraq.
I think it's very important that each one of you came out here today and to keep in touch with us and to raise your voice, to show your face, to stand and walk with the Iraqi people. We are thousands of miles away from them. But when I was in Iraq, I felt so desperately. I wanted to call the United States, and I wanted to say, sisters and brothers, organize a demonstration now. Get together, even if it's 25 people, even if it's 10 of us. Show that we are here in the United States, that they have friends here who do not believe in the extermination of the Iraqi people, that they have friends here who say...
The International Action Center has launched a major medical aid campaign to deliver medical supplies to the people of Iraq. Essential medicines and supplies can save the lives of many, many people. We are asking everyone who sees this video to join in making the Medicine for Iraq campaign a success.
People deserve human rights just as all people do. But the state of Israel has no right to oppress, rob, and slaughter Palestinians and to deny Palestinians human rights. I mean, everything Israel does, they say they do it for security. Anna, tell them what you think about that.
There's nothing defensive about denying Palestinians water.
Yeah. Not long ago, over 1,000 Palestinians died. About 16 Israelis died. Is that a conflict or a genocide? It's not anti-Semitic, opposing government policies known to be pathetic. Come on. The government doesn't represent the people. Many Israeli activists yell the government is evil. Crusades with modern weapons, they keep making sequels. It's apartheid, you find walls of separation. They use to keep Arabs out of the Jewish nation. But people on both sides oppose the situation. You never know it from the mass media lies, they spread it and censor it. Fake media that's independent, cause the government uses the news to spread their views. It's their spin and they profit off battles that they win. What would you do if you were born in Palestine and had no way to leave and saw bombs in the sky? Would you fight back or sit and watch your family members die? Why is Israel unaccountable for crime? Why? These censored animals are going on a daily show. They lie and hide those crimes we need to know. Our taxes fund $7 million given daily for building weapons used by the Israeli military. It's not about the Bible or Quran when they bomb. It's about the sickness, the greed for the riches. The government doesn't represent the people and their interests, so the people gotta react with actions to flip this to witness. Win to oppression with quickness. They do it for democracy? That's just a mockery. Like writing the Constitution, owning slaves on their property. They aim to brainwash. Jews may need to blame it all on Hamas, like when they blame the Indians. They call them militants, do some due diligence. History is written by who had the biggest weapons. History's his story, and how his lies spreaded. The media's his tool to keep us fools that's distracted. For truth we buy bombs, it's a con paying taxes. Security or isn't it? Starving Palestinians, Israelis are admitting it, their government committing it. These censored animals are going on a daily show. They lie and hide those crimes we need to know. Our taxes fund $7 million given daily for building weapons used by the Israeli military. They say it's separation of church and state, but wait, they created a Jewish state in 1948, but they placed it in a land that was ran by Palestine. Britain didn't care about the Arabs there that died. They conquered it. People lived there, man, it was monstrous. Think what this country did. When Britain was on top, we needed one-state solution, a people's revolution, refuting the division of living in separation. For ethnic relations, that only spells devastation. Man, have a revelation, we all humans, that's the same. And no group is prominent, no group should be dominant. Slave trade atrocities, were just as bad or worse as the curse of the Nazis. You can't have democracy created by atrocity, it's hypocrisy. Living in a theocracy. I'm tired of the lies, cause they value Jewish lives over Arabs when they die. And they censored and the false are going on the Daily Show. They lie and hide those crimes we need to know. Our taxes fund $7 million given daily for building weapons used by the Israeli military. They censored and the false are going on the Daily Show. They lie and hide those crimes we need to know. Our taxes fund $7 million given daily for building weapons used by the Israeli military.
The apartheid they got going on is like the apartheid that happened in South Africa, the apartheid that happened here in the U.S. All groups should be equal and equally accountable to mend the situation and the occupation.
There's nothing defensive about preventing people from having materials to build their homes. So much of the institutions that I understood to be defensive cannot be justified by security anymore. Building a wall between Palestinians and Palestinians.
Check out AnnaInTheMiddleEast.com.
My fellow citizens, at this hour, American and coalition forces are in the early stages of military operations to disarm Iraq, to free its people, and to defend the world from grave danger. On my orders, coalition forces have begun striking selected targets of military importance to undermine Saddam Hussein's ability to wage war. These are opening stages of what will be a broad and concerted campaign.
A week ago I was considered one of America's own. Now I'm one that America wants to stone, wants to bone, wants to demote and dethrone. I'm the one that America threw out of its home. Don't tell me I'm wrong, you don't know the pain I hold. You don't know the burdens I carry, the chains I drug. Through the mud, through the flood, I still don't give a I still be the first to grab my weapon and my rug. We've been through too much, I'm in love with you. I showed you love, you supposed to show me too. Remember I shot back when they shot at you. I risked my own life to go to war for you. And I'm telling y'all the truth. And I hope this hurts like bullets to you. I hope you listen real close and hear this through. I'm disgraced to say that I ever fought for you. Now that's the war crime. Sending me over there hard way. Then after I done what you said, you turn your back on me. Now that's the war crime. Soldiers being placed in jail for killing the people you sent them over there to kill. Now that's the war crime. Sending me to die. And me being punished for doing anything to survive. Now that's a war crime. Y'all not taking care of your own. You people turning your back on the ones who fought. Now that's a war crime. I fought for Sue, I fought for your daddy and your grandma too. Honestly, over there, I wish I had died. A 21 gun salute would've gave me more pride. Instead of this cell that I'm locked inside, 3 hot center time and minimal fucking daylight. Y'all consider this right? This how we treat our own. Heroes when they gone, scumbags when they come home. All because I went to war, that's what I'm in here for. Not because I caught that man fucking my ex-boy. I should've killed her for it. Because killing what goes to your head after the war. All I think about is entering that front door and pulling the trigger on the judge and everyone in the court. Everyone watching the sports but showing us no support. Everyone that doesn't realize freedom does have a cost. Now that's a war crime. Sending me over there hard way. Then after I done what you said, you turn your back on me. Now that's a war crime. My soldiers being placed in jail for killing the people you sent them over there to kill. Now that's a war crime. Sending me to die. And me being punished for doing anything to survive. Now that's a war crime. Y'all not taking care of your own. You people turning your back on the ones who fought. Now that's a war crime. Yeah, now that's a war crime. Yeah, now that's a war crime. Now that's a war crime. Yeah, I'm a stick of dynamite away from blowing loading the mag and shooting the first person I see in the gut. Hell yeah, that's but so this job done. Only way y'all will listen is if I pull out my gun. If I kill your son, then y'all see what's going on. Then y'all pay attention to all the crimes y'all cause. When I run in your home and your wife, after I'm done I kill your husband. Slow with a knife, crazy right. Remember it's for you I went to fight. Now it's you that I'm gonna fight. You taught me this life. You taught me how to kill. You taught me to be ruthless and kill or be killed. Now that's a war crime. Then after I done what you said, you turn your back on me. Now that's a war crime. Our soldiers being placed in jail for killing the people you sent them over there to kill. Now that's a war crime. Sending me to die, and me being punished for doing anything to survive. Now that's a war crime. Y'all not taking care of your own. You people turning your back on the ones who fought. Now that's a war crime.
Okay, that was Sergeant Dunsmore and War Crimes. Before that was The Truth and Crimes in Palestine. There's, if anybody wants to call in now, you can call in at area code 347-215-6231. That's 347-215-6231. I'm not going to be keeping it open too long, but I hope that people understand what's happening around the world because of the United States of America. Our country is supposed to be pro-democracy. Well, it's not a democracy, it's a republic. And that's what we're more pro-republic than democracy. But 70 cases, the United States overthrew illegitimate, voted for governments and replaced them with dictators. And the reason was because the governments were thinking about going to communism, they thought, or socialism, and they really didn't listen to what the United States wanted. There are two countries that are not afraid of the United States, and they're small countries, Venezuela and Cuba. It sort of surprised me that the United States didn't do something to them. Yes, Cuba is a communist country, and it's a dictatorship. But is it worse than what was there before when Batista ran it? I don't think so. There are a lot of things, areas where the government is helping the people. Venezuela, Chavez is elected by the people. And the U.S. doesn't like him because he doesn't like the U.S. But they do want his oil. That's probably one reason the United States doesn't like him. Because they don't get enough oil from him. Most of the wars by the United States over the past few years were for oil or for certain things of value. They didn't care about the people. As you heard, World War II was started the bombing of civilians. And really it was the Allies that started it. And then each war that comes along, more and more civilians are killed. In Vietnam, I think it was 70% of the casualties were civilians. In Iraq, it's about 90%. Most of them children. The United States has done more harm to Iraq than Saddam Hussein did. We need to get out of Iraq. The government wants us to stay a little while longer, and then our army says, well, we'll stay, but you have to give us free rein to kill people. I don't want any of our troops tried and convicted in your courts. They can kill people, and you can't do a damn thing about it. And that's what they've been doing. Now, I'm not condemning the troops. I'm condemning the government. Many of the troops did not want to do what they've done. The United States has been supporting Israel in their occupation of Palestine. They say that if Palestine becomes a country, then Israel will not be safe. Bullshit. Simple as that. Israel is an aggressor. Granted, there was a war, and they took the land in the war. They gave Egypt back their land. They gave Jordan back some of their land. But the Palestinians, they aren't giving them back their land. They're stealing land from them. They're kicking them out of their homes so that settlers can come from Israel. Our dear old president said that the UN should not grant Palestine the status of being a country. He said Palestinians do all kinds of bad things, but he doesn't mention what Israel does. He says that the only way to settle it is through peace negotiations. Peace negotiations have not done a damn thing in all these years. If the president was not a hypocrite, Congress was not full of hypocrites, they would go against Israel when it comes to Palestine. Stop supplying them with weapons. And tell them, if you want our help, you got to free Palestine, get the settlements out of Palestine, give them back their land and their money. Look at Bahrain. The United States is going to give them more arms so that they can kill their people. Now, of course, Syria is bad for killing people, and they are. Iran, not as bad as Syria. Not as bad as Bahrain. The United States got upset with China and Iran and other countries because they complained about human rights violations. The United States says, well, you shouldn't talk. Maybe their talking will help them get rid of their human rights violations. You ever thought about that? Maybe they're getting to think, we're wrong, but the United States is wrong. It's a big problem. As you heard, the United States people are not hated. The wealth of the United States is not hated. It's the way that wealth comes. It is the United States sticking their nose where it's not supposed to be. The Iraq War is an illegal war by all means. Not only from our laws, but from the UN laws, which are our laws now. The Afghanistan war, again, based on lies. The United States should stop killing innocent people. If you think about it, first of all, I think that 9/11 was an inside job between the United States and Israel. All the evidence points to that. The Pentagon, all the evidence points to the fact that it was not an airliner that crashed into the Pentagon. I just saw on YouTube that it was not an airliner. And they showed the explosion. And everything points to it being a missile that came from a helicopter. The plane that crashed in the field in Pennsylvania, they never found any parts of the plane, no people or anything. That's because it didn't happen. There are too many things about 9/11 that say it was an inside job. That was a crime by George Bush and Israel against the people of the United States. George Bush, Dick Cheney should be tried for war crimes. Now, the reason that President Obama doesn't go along with that is because he's committed war crimes too. He's committed crimes against humanity. And they've committed crimes against our own people. And they're going to commit more if we don't do something about it. Now, people are rebelling with the Wall Street thing. And now it's spread all over the country and all over the world. Here in Detroit on the 21st of October, we're going to have a week-long rally. And I'm going to take part in it. So, what I want you to do is take part in it. Go to Google Occupy Wall Street. You'll find a website there that tells about all the cities in the country that will be protesting. St. Louis protest is going, Los Angeles, San Francisco, Seattle, Kansas City. I believe Phoenix, Arizona, I'm not sure. But it's all over the country. Now, the Republicans have made it so that 500,000 people are losing their right to vote. These are people that would vote Democratic. Now, Obama isn't much better than the Republicans, but he is better. He's our best choice right now. What we need are some independents running and throw out the Democrats and Republicans that are hurting our country, which is most of them. Something has to be done, and it has to be done now. We have to go against the bankers. Excuse me. On tomorrow night, I'm not doing a show. I'm taking the night off. Monday and Tuesday, I'm doing a show on financial meltdown in the world. Half of it is going to be on Monday and the other half on Tuesday. And I hope that you listen to it. The recordings last about an hour and 20 minutes. I got first two parts of it are on Monday and the last two are on Tuesday. And if you go to my calendar, you'll see about the shows and also at the show page. Please, check them out. I admit they're long, but then afterwards, within the 2 or 3 days, I get them on all my blogs. Also, the video portion of today's show will be on the blog within the next couple of days, along with the video portion of Monday and Tuesday shows. In fact, they'll probably be on the blogs before I do the shows. So I'm getting close to quitting time. I'm going to play some music. And we're going to go to So Far Away by Kara Hogan. And I love this song.
Your
Now we're going to go Palestine Will Be Free by Maher Zain Tamadani. actually going to go back about 80 years to Paul Robeson and the Freedom Train. Have a good night. Have a good week. Have a good month and a good year. Most of all, have a beautiful life. And thank you for being you.
I read in the papers about the Freedom Train. I hear on the radio about the Freedom Train. I've seen folks talking about the Freedom Train. Lord, man, I've been waiting for that Freedom Train. Washington, Richmond, Durham, Chattanooga, Atlanta, Waycross, Georgia. That's just like Johannesburg. Good Lord. Way down in Dixie, the only trains I see got Jim Crow coaches set aside for me. That's just for colored folks. I hope there's no Jim Crow on the Freedom Train. No backdoor entrance to the Freedom Train. No signs for colored on the Freedom Train. No white folks only on the Freedom Train. Well, I'm going to check up. I'm going to check up on the Freedom Train. Who's the engineer on the Freedom Train? Can a cold black man drive the Freedom Train? Am I still a porter on the Freedom Train? Are the ballot boxes on the Freedom Train? Colored folks vote on the Freedom Train? Well, I'm going to check up, man. I'm going to check up on the Freedom Train. Birmingham station's marked colored and white. White folks left the colored right. Even got a segregated lane. Is that the way to get aboard the Freedom Train? If my children ask, Daddy, will you please explain why a Jim Crow station for the Freedom Train? What can I tell my children? You tell me. Because freedom ain't freedom when a man ain't free. I'm going to check up. Check up on the Freedom Train. Yeah, my brother named Jimmy died at Anzio. Died for real, and it wasn't no show. Is this here freedom on the Freedom Train really freedom or a show again? I'm going to check up on the Freedom Train. Let the Freedom Train come zooming down the track, gleaming in the sunlight for white and black. Not stopping at no stations marked colored nor white, stopping in the fields in the broad daylight. Out in the country in the wide open air, where there never was a Jim Crow sign nowhere. No lily white committees, politicians of note, no poll tax mayors which colored can't vote. And maybe from their graves in Anzio, black men and white will say, we want it so. Black men and white will say, ain't that fine? At home, they got a Freedom Train. A Freedom Train that's yours and mine.
Remember one time, when Abraham Lincoln freed the slaves, he did not give them citizenship. He did not give them the right to vote. He did not pass any laws against the lynchings because he still felt that the blacks were inferior to the whites. Have a good day, and thank you. Well, like I said, I did that show about 2 years ago on Blog Talk. And what I'm going to do now is I've got 4 things I'm going to play. The first is Children of the Dust by John Pilger. Second, I'm going to have Bombs Falling and Everywhere, Nowhere to Go by David Archer. Then I'm going to have 2 songs by Ryan Haney. And he's a Vietnam War veteran. The first one will be I'll Be Crying All My Life, and the second, Until Their Powers Are Gone. So, here we go.
Children of the Dust. Link, John Pilger. Published 28th of May 2007. As the Israeli army attempts to imprison an entire nation, it is the youngest who suffer most. Half of all Palestinians killed in the past 6 years are children. Israel is destroying any notion of a state of Palestine and is being allowed to imprison an entire nation. That is clear from the latest attacks on Gaza, whose suffering has become a metaphor for the tragedy imposed on the peoples of the Middle East and beyond. These attacks, reported on Channel 4 News, were targeting key militants of Hamas and the Hamas infrastructure. The BBC described a clash between the same militants and Israeli F-16 aircraft. Consider one such clash. The militants' car was blown to pieces by a missile from a fighter bomber. Who were these militants? In my experience, all the people of Gaza are militant in their resistance to their jailer and tormentor. As for the Hamas infrastructure, this was the headquarters of the party that won last year's democratic elections in Palestine. To report that would give the wrong impression. It would suggest that the people in the car and all the others over the years, the babies and the elderly who have also clashed with fighter bombers, were victims of a monstrous injustice. It would suggest the truth. Some say, said the Channel 4 reporter, that Hamas has courted this attack. Perhaps he was referring to the rockets fired at Israel from within the prison of Gaza which killed no one. Under international law, an occupied people has the right to use arms against the occupier's forces. This right is never reported. The Channel 4 reporter referred to an endless war, suggesting equivalence. There is no war. There is resistance among the poorest, most vulnerable people on earth to an enduring, illegal occupation imposed by the world's fourth largest military power, whose weapons of mass destruction range from cluster bombs to thermonuclear devices, bankrolled by the superpower. In the past 6 years alone, wrote the historian Alan Papp, Israeli forces have killed more than 4,000 Palestinians, half of them children. Consider how this power works. According to documents obtained by United Press International, the Israelis once secretly funded Hamas as a direct attempt to divide and dilute support for a strong, secular PLO Palestine Liberation Organization by using a competing religious alternative, in the words of a former CIA official. Today, Israel and the US have reversed this ploy and openly back Hamas's rival, Fatah, with bribes of millions of dollars. Israel recently secretly allowed 500 Fatah fighters to cross into Gaza from Egypt, where they had been trained by another American client, the Cairo dictatorship. The Israelis' aim is to undermine the elected Palestinian government and ignite a civil war. They have not quite succeeded. In response, the Palestinians forged a government of national unity, of both Hamas and Fatah. The latest attacks are aimed at destroying this. With Gaza secured in chaos and the West Bank walled in, the Israeli plan, wrote the Palestinian academic Carmen Abolsi, is a Hobbesian vision of an anarchic society, truncated, violent, powerless, destroyed, cowed, ruled by disparate militias, gangs, religious ideologues and extremists, broken up into ethnic and religious tribalism and co-opted collaborationists. Look to the Iraq of today. On 19th of May, The Guardian received this letter from Omar Jabri al-Sarafih, a Ramallah resident. Land, water and air are under constant sight of a sophisticated military surveillance system that makes Gaza like the Truman Show, he wrote. In this film every Gazan actor has a predefined role and the Israeli army behaves as a director. The Gaza Strip needs to be shown as what it is, an Israeli laboratory backed by the international community where human beings are used as rabbits to test the most dramatic and perverse practices of economic suffocation and starvation. The remarkable Israeli journalist Gideon Levy has described the starvation sweeping Gaza's more than 1.25 million inhabitants and the thousands of wounded, disabled and shell-shocked people unable to receive any treatment. The shadows of human beings roam the ruins. They only know the Israeli army will return and they know what this will mean for them: more imprisonment in their homes for weeks, more death and destruction in monstrous proportions. Whenever I have been in Gaza, I have been consumed by this melancholia, as if I were a trespasser in a secret place of mourning. Skeins of smoke from wood fires hang over the same Mediterranean Sea that free peoples know, but not here. Along beaches that tourists would regard as picturesque trudge the incarcerated of Gaza. Lines of sepia figures become silhouettes, marching at the water's edge, through lapping sewage. The water and power are cut off, yet again, when the generators are bombed, yet again. Iconic murals on walls pockmarked by bullets commemorate the dead, such as the family of 18 men, women and children who clashed with a 500-pound American-Israeli bomb dropped on their block of flats as they slept. Presumably, they were militants. More than 40% of the population of Gaza are children under the age of 15. Reporting on a 4-year field study in occupied Palestine for the British Medical Journal, Dr. Derek Summerfield wrote that 2/3 of the 621 children killed at checkpoints, in the street, on the way to school, in their homes, died from small arms fire, directed in over half of cases to the head, neck and chest, the sniper's wound. A friend of mine with the United Nations calls them children of the dust. Their wonderful childishness, their rowdiness and giggles and charm, belie their nightmare. I met Dr. Khalid Dolan, a psychiatrist who heads one of several children's community health projects in Gaza. He told me about his latest survey. The statistic I personally find unbearable, he said, is that 99.4% of the children we study suffer trauma. Once you look at the rates of exposure to trauma, you see why. 99.2% of the study group's homes were bombarded, 97.5% were exposed to tear gas, 96.6% witnessed shootings, 95.8% witnessed bombardment and funerals, almost a quarter saw family members injured or killed. He said children as young as 3 faced the dichotomy caused by having to cope with these conditions. They dreamt about becoming doctors and nurses, then this was overtaken by an apocalyptic vision of themselves as the next generation of suicide bombers. They experienced this invariably after an attack by the Israelis. For some boys, their heroes were no longer football players, but a confusion of Palestinian, martyrs, and even the enemy, because Israeli soldiers are the strongest and have Apache gunships. Shortly before he died, Edward said bitterly reproached foreign journalists for what he called their destructive role in stripping the context of Palestinian violence, the response of a desperate and horribly oppressed people, and the terrible suffering from which it arises. Just as the invasion of Iraq was a war by media, so the same can be said of the grotesquely one-sided conflict in Palestine. As the pioneering work of the Glasgow University Media Group shows, television viewers are rarely told that the Palestinians are victims of an illegal military occupation. The term, occupied territories, is seldom explained. Only 9% of young people interviewed in the UK know that the Israelis are the occupying force and the illegal settlers are Jewish. Many believe them to be Palestinian. The selective use of language by broadcasters is crucial in maintaining this confusion and ignorance. Words such as terrorism, murder, and savage, cold-blooded killing describe the deaths of Israelis, almost never Palestinians. There are honorable exceptions. The kidnapped BBC reporter Alan Johnston is one of them. Yet, amidst the avalanche of coverage of his abduction, no mention is made of the thousands of Palestinians abducted by Israel, many of whom will not see their families for years. There are no appeals for them. In Jerusalem, the Foreign Press Association documents the shooting and intimidation of its members by Israeli soldiers. In one 8-month period, as many journalists, including the CNN bureau chief in Jerusalem, were wounded by the Israelis, some of them seriously. In each case, the FPA complained. In each case, there was no satisfactory reply. A censorship by omission runs deep in Western journalism on Israel, especially in the US. Hamas is dismissed as a terrorist group sworn to Israel's destruction, and one that refuses to recognize Israel and wants to fight, not talk. This theme suppresses the truth.
Gaza, January the 13th, 2009, 6:15 p.m. The leaflets came yesterday, telling us our neighborhood would be attacked. The whole population of the area is terrified. We have nowhere to go. My neighbor checked at the under shelter, but it was full, overflowing. There is nowhere to go. We waited to be bombed out. Children have seen the dead bodies of children on television. They are crying now. They are terrified. When will this end? There was screaming. It is dark and cold, but most of us are still outside. My family is outside next to the house. We have nowhere to go. day. It was terrifying. We have nowhere to run. There was an airstrike every 5 minutes. Thick black smoke 50 m away from us. People were scared, ran outside of their houses and gathered together in the street. 350 people in the street. The street was the safest place. If our house is bombed, 300 will get trapped and die like the people we saw on television. It is quiet for 20 minutes now, but we don't know if it will start again. What if it is just a short break? We can't take the risk. My children are shivering. It is getting so cold. Some neighbors went back inside, but they are staying on the first floor. We don't know what will come next. This is the closest it has come to our house. The neighborhood next to ours was bombed. What do? We don't know. We have nowhere to go. Nowhere to go.
The sad thing is it's not only happening in Palestine, but it's happening all over the world now. Yemen, Pakistan, Afghanistan. Yeah, we're out of Iraq, but we still have private companies running in Iraq. So many kids are being murdered. That's one of the worst things of it. And, it is war. And I don't see anywhere in the thou shalt not kill commandment that excuses our government from killing people and excuses the mass murder and the genocide that our government does. Okay, next I'm going to go to Ryan and Haney. First it'll be I'll Be Crying All My Life. Second it'll be Until All Their Powers Are Gone. Again, he's an Iraq veteran, and he did these and many other. So here we go.
I remember you from before I knew myself. I watched and learned from my elders for rage and love and hell. And you were there like a teacher trying to steer me down a road where I would not be forgotten, where not so many go. I am proud to say that I feel that I have done you right. I'll be crying all my life. I deep emotions, full of woods and coulds. And you'd scream and be destructive and laugh at all the pain. And I would stumble blindly, trying to smile at the rain. And all along we never knew that some future had you waiting in its sights. I'll be crying all my life. Last summer, everything was going smooth. Had sketch lists or the playground, drinking on the roof. And days of revolution spent in meetings trying to break these rulers' backs, or nights of wild parties and dreams of riding double stacks. And I remember when you got arrested in Lansing for playing with that knife. Nights spent drinking 40s never seemed like they would end. Surrounded by depression, but also by good friends. And we sang songs together on a sidewalk or in a room, and danced to Irish music as if the end coming soon. Still we joke of insecurities with smiles of delight. I'll be crying all my life. And I heard your voice on Friday, that last night on the phone. I was in Oakland, you were stuck at home. And you said that you loved me, and we spoke for a while. And I told you that I love you, and said it with a smile. That night you swerved left and then harder to the right. I'll be crying all my life. And I remember Saturday, waking up at 6 a.m. A call from your mother, of a friend. And I cried and wished time backwards, and the world came crashing down. And I cursed that damn car wreck and searched for higher ground. And I hope that you were smiling in the end. I know you held on tight, and I'll be crying all my life. Now I'm lost in this place I knew so well, spinning circles in this town where you rose and fell. Where the grace of your presence still brings me to my knees. of infinity is floating in the breeze. But with a head held high, I'll count these coins and toss the dice. But I'll be crying all my life. Now the world has lost one of its finer men. There are so many others who it should have been. But in this life, there are victims and the guilty do prevail. So I will maintain honor, and I will tell your tale. For your friend and comrade, I will always fight. But from Quebec to Argentina, I see soldiers in the streets, 1 million angry marchers, a final state of siege. From Peru to South Korea, there comes a time for change, but in the mighty halls of power, the fight has been arranged. In the secret labs in Washington, they said we needed war. Weapons of mass destruction was what they were looking for. But they couldn't find those weapons because they made them up. So they claimed liberation and dropped 10,000 bombs. Now in the streets of Baghdad, you'll see the final hour as soldiers moving money and elected into power. And they call it democracy and they call it peace. But war brought occupation, watch hostilities increase. And it wasn't about oil, it wasn't about land. It was an imperialistic step with the goal of world command. And it was not the first, and it won't be the last. These wars will keep exploding until all the governments collapse. From structural adjustment to the death of Rachel Corrie and the death squads in Colombia, it's all the same old story. Capitalism's advancement, master versus slave, a constant fight for profit just to fill another grave. Now see a world where justice is as foreign as the past, where the poor are stuck in prisons in a race to come in last, and the murky depths of oppression are deeper than the sea, and freedom has been buried by our insecurity. And billionaires will sit high up and watch the fighting flare as picateros and peasants struggle just to get their share. And the oppressors of the world watch the wars go on and on, but the poor will not stop rising until all their power's gone.
Okay, what I plan on doing is probably have a nightly show at 9 o'clock. And what I'll do is, like, there'll be times when I'll use my old Blog Talk radio shows, and expand on them, because Blog Talk was limited to 2 hours, and some of them 1 hour or hour and a half. Anyway, I hope that you enjoyed this show. I hope you enjoy the future ones. When I get enough listeners, I will try and figure out how to hook up Skype to this, and then I will take calls on the shows I do. Also, I'm thinking about, I've got audio book of the book I wrote, The Crazy Old White Man from the Hood, and I'm thinking about running that on here too. The problem is that the last chapter of the book, for some reason the audio disappeared on it, and so I got to redo that, and what I may do is just do it on the air. Anyway, I think it's time for me to go. So when I opened the show, I had a song, I had a thing about a song called Mr. Lee with the Bobettes, and my sign off tonight is I Shot Mr. Lee by the Bobettes. So here we go. Uh-oh.
1, 2, 3. I shot Mr. Lee. 3, 4, 5. I got tired of his job. Whoa, 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 we should have never. Whoa, 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 we should have never. Whoa, 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 we should have never. Oh no. Whoa, 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 we should have never. Whoa, 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 we should have never. Oh no. Whoa, 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 we should have never. Never met a sweetie. You should have never met me. Shouldn't have never met a sweetie. Shouldn't have never met me. Now his memory is down in history. He was a real cool cat and wore a high top hat. He was a real cool cat and wore a high top hat. He was a handsome cat. All the girls loved that. I said, whoa, 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 we should have never.
I hope you enjoyed the show. I want you all to have a good day. I want you to have a good week, good month, and a good year. Most of all, I want you to have a beautiful life. And thank you for being you.